Welcome to Censored number 132. And before I begin with the main article, let me state a few scriptures here for our right-wing pals in the media. Prove all things, hold fast that which is good. That's 1 Thessalonians 5:21. He that oppresses the poor to increase his riches, and he that gives to the rich shall surely come to want. Proverbs 22, verse 16. He that makes haste to be rich shall not be innocent. Proverbs 28, verse 20. And as the nail sticks to the stone, so sin sticks to buying and selling. Ecclesiastes 27, verse 2. And now to the main article, which is entitled, We Let It Happen, by William J. Eisenman, Ph.D. On the radar and below the radar, forces are actively trying to destroy or make impotent the United States government. We complain that prices are too high or that we're not making enough money. We rant about foreign aid, the trade deficit, CEO salaries being too high. We complain about congresspersons and senators making too much money. We conveniently forget that we let these things happen. We hired the representatives that brought this all about. It didn't occur by magic. Free traders sold us a fairy tale about an invisible hand that guides the economy. We don't need rules or regulations. We are to let buyers and sellers do as they will, and all will be well. What happened is that we ended up pleasing the economy instead of the other way around. Our country, our economy, is not working for 80 to 90% of us. The rules of our economy are arbitrary and biased. It has become clear that the only people getting rich are those who make the rules. Doing what is right does not determine success in America. We've learned that playing by the rules is a fantasy. In the industrialized world, Americans work more hours, have shorter vacations, and have less paid time off than anyone else. Americans retire later than residents of other nations, and Republicans want to raise the Social Security retirement age. The United States has no law mandating maximum hours of work per week, as do 134 other nations. Yet we claim we have the best economy in the world. What is evident is that our economy lacks the proper external supervision. We now know that the free market is merely a fable. For decades, America has been robbing its people to prosper others in foreign lands. Our unregulated economy has harmed the most vulnerable members of our society. The capitalist system is flawed. The conservative view of our economy is that it should reward the good and punish the bad. The lazy must be deprived of any help. The conservative views work as punishment, and that both people and nature must serve the economy. The economy must get bigger, have a larger GDP, and a faster rate of growth. Sad to say, most Americans know little about the economy and couldn't care less. Those who cut services, starve social programs of funds, and neglect infrastructure, they are deliberately destroying our nation. Conservatives confuse the economy with politics and religion. The economy becomes a moral enforcer, and the free market is religious doctrine. God prospers the good. The good are the deserving, those who have. To the conservative, the economy is a political machine. The invisible hand did not bring about the 2007-2008 financial meltdown. Greedy people in power did. Wall Street makes trouble. This is nothing new, but it certainly destroys the myth of the invisible hand. The financial industry has received special protection from the United States government. Subsidization grew the financial industry, which has been made immune to free market discipline. Too big to fail is not a free market policy. By this time, it is hoped that it has become clear that big corporations pose a danger to democratic institutions by their size and influence and indifference to public interest. They do not act morally. In our world, men and women are forced, on pain of losing their livelihood, to live at least part of the time by alien values. Corporations lack an instinct for human welfare. And contrary to declarations of the United States Supreme Court, they are not human. They are not persons. We are working for the market and corporations when they should be working for us. The corporation of today is a sociopathic entity. The United States experienced its first economic crash in 1792 with a run on New York banks. There were economic declines in 1819, 1837, 1857, 1873, 1893, 1929, and 2008. In 1857, in 1808, $50 was considered a little fortune. American exports in 1857 amounted to $279 million. In the late 1870s, most states treated unions as illegal combinations. States reorganized their militias into National Guards to handle striking workers. And in the 1890s, Republicans rarely supported free trade. In 1894, Democrats passed a progressive income tax of 2% on incomes of $4,000, which exempted 98% of Americans. in order to regulate railroad rates, in 1890, the Sherman Antitrust Act was passed. And in 1889, the Populist Party was born. In the South, the Democratic Party was once demagogic and favored disenfranchisement and formal segregation of public facilities. In 1895, the United States Supreme Court declared the income tax illegal, and the Federal Reserve was founded in 1913. In 1920, the United States owned half the world's gold, and a Model T Ford cost $310. In America, there were 4.8 million unemployed in 1930, and by 1933 the number had grown to 14.5 million. Were these all lazy moochers? Did they bring on their own suffering, as conservatives would have you believe? These were innocent victims of circumstance and a flawed economic system. In the early 1930s, prices fell by 9% per year. This is good for consumers, but not for manufacturers. Another flaw in the system. These flaws continually pit the worker against the employer. It used to be said that with Republicans, the poor should expect nothing. But with Democrats, they might expect a few crumbs. This changed drastically in the 1990s, when the Democratic Party largely abandoned its commitment to attacking vested privilege. The Democratic Party embraced Wall Street and deregulation of markets. With Republican help, the Democrats changed welfare as we know it and took all morality out of the system. The program continues to fail to do what a moral system would do: lift the person out of poverty. This is the meaning behind the biblical admonishment to give your 2 coats to the poor. And if you have meat, invite them to your table. Inflation is man-made. Because we have been lied to so long, we no longer know the true cost of inflation to our economy. But in 1972, one could buy a brand new Vega for $2,400. Where is the equivalent of that car today? Today, the expansion of credit has become a substitute for money. And money is not a consumption good. When everything is more expensive, it means the objective exchange, the value of money, is falling. And when price increases are passed on, it simply reduces the value of money. Still, an increase in money decreases purchasing power. Yet increasing the purchasing power is not a good thing. What? Wouldn't we all like our money to buy more? Increasing the money supply results in inflation. This is the Federal Reserve. This is what the Federal Reserve has been doing for some time now. Now, if producers don't like low prices, why is everything a bargain or on sale? We can't be getting the lowest prices. Although their supporters failed to take notice, the Republican Party has a long history of abusing power for selfish reasons and screwing the middle class. They use propaganda to cover their tracks. They twist and wrest facts till they resemble a pretzel. They do what is best for them and those in power. There is no sympathy for the middle class and pure disdain for the poor. The rich and Republicans do not care about the majority of Americans. Quote, "If anyone will not work, neither should we eat," unquote. This was said by Michelle Bachmann in quoting Paul in the Bible. She meant this as a swipe against the lazy poor, but she didn't understand the context of the quote. Paul was not speaking of employment per se, but of the work of God within the church. Republican presidential hopeful Rick Santorum would outlaw or extramarital sex. It must be remembered also that God asked Michelle Bachmann, Herman Cain, Rick Perry, and Rick Santorum to run for office. And God told G.W. Bush to go into Iraq. But since God is not the author of confusion, it was not God's voice that G.W. Bush heard. Ann Coulter believes women should not vote. The Republican Party is anti-science. Republicans favor abstinence only for teens. This did not work well with Sarah Palin's daughter, Bristol. Republicans now and in the past have ruined the country. With help from the CIA, Ronald Reagan and Bush Sr. made a deal with Iran to hold the American hostages longer, to further their political plans and release them when it would be convenient for the Republican Party. Yet none called them out as traitors. Republicans pretend they are the party of values and morality. They would have us believe they own the moral high ground. Republicans have been screwing the middle class and the poor for decades. 12 years of Reagan and Bush brought down the middle class, consumer spending, and ultimately the economy. President Reagan illegally sold arms to Iran. Sarah Palin dipped into her pack for her own personal use, including a trip to Disneyland. G.W. Bush screwed us by wiretapping phone calls without warrants and was supported by Congress. Bush voted to restrict stem cell research. He gave wealthy Americans a huge tax cut. America lost 3 million jobs while Mr. Bush was in office. The Bush administration was caught paying media and reporters to tout administration policies. During the 2006 elections, the Bush administration used taxpayer funds to campaign for Republican candidates. In 2003, the Bush administration leaked the covert status of Agent Valerie Plame Wilson of the CIA. The Bush administration and the neocons were obsessed with war. This led to lying about weapons of mass destruction, being in Iraq. The Bush administration tortured, and Dick Cheney supported waterboarding. Dick Cheney made $34 million from Halliburton's involvement in the Iraq War. By this time, it is no secret that Republicans are in bed with big business, that they prefer corporations over people. ExxonMobil paid no taxes in 2009. Republican Congress legislators blocked legislation imposing a tax on companies sending jobs overseas. This is not something a patriot would do. Republicans reward with tax breaks companies who ship jobs overseas. Republicans do not want to punish Wall Street for the wrongs committed in the 2008 meltdown. They don't want any reform and want to repeal the Dodd-Frank Act, which has already been emasculated. The American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, finds friends and fellow travelers among Republicans. ALEC wants to privatize education, break unions, deregulate major industries, and wants to pass voter ID laws. Republicans don't understand the middle class, and their actions indicate they don't want to. As a share of GDP, in the 1960s, corporations paid taxes of 4%. By the 1990s, this had dropped to 2%. And by 2010, it was 1.3%. So how is it that they are overtaxed? Tax revenue from corporations in the 1960s was 20%, while today it is 9%. They are liars. And please remember this. With all the howling about raising the minimum wage, employee wages are tax deductible, a write-off for the corporation. When President Reagan cut taxes sharply, unemployment rose to 10.8%. And after taxes were raised 11 times, unemployment fell. There are those who believe the myth that Ronald Reagan never raised taxes. Saint Reagan would never do such a thing. Facts are stubborn things. He did. Republicans maintain that the poor are lazy moochers. And this is why they vote never to raise the minimum wage. Republicans seek always to broaden the base, to make the poor and middle class pay more, so they can give the rich and corporations tax cuts. Republicans are not for the working class. Republicans are not populists. Republicans try to revive tax loopholes that would make foreign profits exempt from taxation to give businesses more incentive to go abroad and take middle-class jobs with them. It is no secret that Republicans seek to defund and destroy the American government. It is the Republicans, the corporations, and the rich against the rest of us. The cutting of federal programs in 2011 lost us 370,000 jobs. It is clear by now that the number one job of Republicans is to keep the rich wealthy. And they hide this motive under a carpet of religious values and American nationalism. And anyone with only half his brain functioning knows this. If we wish to reform, we must first get rid of all the dead wood in Washington, D.C. We must vote in those who are for the bottom 80% of Americans. Then, this perverted political system we've erected must be dismantled. No money in politics. In all of this, we must find a way of helping Republican supporters to see the light and know who the true enemies of the working class are. The end.
Hi, this is William H. Morrow. The best way to join our organization is to get your free annual subscription to Newsletter Censored with your gift to support this work. The newsletter of hard-hitting truth and news fighting censorship and conservative propaganda since 1977. There is nothing out there like the Newsletter Censored in the mainstream media or the press. This newsletter is the very best way to join and be a part of our organization. We're living the end times, so you need Newsletter Censored. Go to www.newslettercensored.com.